other news tabloids that we have on today's front page. So in the studios today I have with me Mohammed Kamara, editor of The Watch newspaper. Good morning and welcome to Front Page.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
So let's start the discussion. Let's go over to our own AYB newspaper, which reads maternal mortality. Sierra Leone death rates reduced to 354 per 100,000 live births. So Kamara, to start this discussion, we've seen the Minister of Health made an announcement of the reduction of maternal mortality from about 400 and something to 354 per 100,000 live births. What's your view on this? Would you say this is a massive improvement in the health sector, or would you consider 354 deaths per 100,000 live births still high for Sierra Leone?
I'll have my own different view from a journalistic point of view. I firmly believe that those figures came from government hospitals and not outside it. What I think would have been appropriate for a developing nation to be able to inform the general public about the number of deaths, per year, is to commence at the village level. Unfortunately, we don't have a data system at the village level, a chiefdom level, a district level, or regional level. The West Freetown would have been the receiving of what's finally. The data would have been the best for a proper data system to store all what is coming out from the provinces. Because I will believe that thousands of people gave birth that were not recorded. Thousands of people died that were not recorded per year, probably hundreds of people, right? Because we don't have a proper system in place. So what I would rather suggest here is to review the system and go back to know that the best way to calculate, to give figures to the general public, is to start it at the village level. If not, all those figures that are coming with due respect to the Minister of Health, I believe and firmly believe that they are those figures that took place at government-owned hospitals.
Okay, so would you say this drop is a real reflection or improved healthcare in Sierra Leone?
Pertaining to the government hospital statistics, I think is a drastic drop we should be proud of. But wait a minute. It is left with us, under small thousands or more probably to be included in these figures. They're living in the provinces. They don't have access to statistics. Nobody goes there. That is my own preoccupation.
Okay, so with regards to this drop, how much credit do you think should go to government policy versus the work of NGOs and international partners?
The whole section is that the NGOs, our NGOs can give you money. They can give you the moral support. They can give us everything that you want, but they are not the final implementers, right? What should government do is, here we come at a time when we're no longer talk about theory, we talk about theory very little. What we need is practicality and pragmatism. Let them ensure that they put mechanisms in place where, in counting the population, counting the number of deaths, counting the number of deaths in a given country like us, and we'll talk about democratic pluralism, should start at the village level.
Okay, so we've seen a withdrawal of US aid to countries like Sierra Leone. How do you think this is going to affect us moving forward?
We have other nations to count on. Let me tell you something. You have to take into consideration what the Republican president of the USA thinks a lot. It's not only Sierra Leone, it's not only Africa, it's not only Asia, it's not only the Caribbean, South and Central America, or even Western Europe, or in former Eastern Europe. It's everywhere. The policies of President Trump does not suit many developing, or not to talk about developed countries as well. So without America, our belief family, we can go with China, we can go with India, we can go to Western Europe, right? Trump is saying he's doing his, but that will not absolutely affect us because we have other partners who are contributing day in, night out towards the development of this country because they're seeing progress to it.
But should we continue to rely on other countries for our own development?
It's too early. We failed before. And it's only now that trying to fill a vacuum. We shall continue to develop. Of course, let me tell you one thing. We live in a world where we live independently. We cannot do without them, they cannot do without us as well, right? I really want to say this for you to understand much more better. No country can isolate itself on its own, right? But the problem is we try to minimize the dependency. And by minimizing it, we have to build a structure, a infrastructure, a system, a mechanism that will suit it, not now.
Okay, so let's look at resource allocation and policy. With such a significant reduction. Why do you think there are many health centers that are still under-equipped and understaffed? Do you think resources are being allocated efficiently?
No, you're talking about many health centers and provincial towns, I don't believe. Before, they were not there. I used to say this. We cannot develop the health system in a hurry, and we're expecting it to take place right now. There had been vacuums before in the health sector, which the present government is trying to fill. One, we didn't have a lot of clinics, hospitals at the provincial level. Now we have them. So the question of supply, either of medicine, staff and all that, will take a time to do it systematically, depending on what we're going to get from our partners.
Okay, so looking at the Free Health Care Initiative, do you think they've delivered on its promise, especially for pregnant women and lactating mothers?
Well, the first stage, I remember, it was 2010 in April, right? When the former president and his bank Umar declared the Health Care Initiative at Cottage Hospital. We all there, right? But I used to say this. Sometimes corruption will hamper an initiative. Sometimes commitment to patriotism and nationalism will fast-track that initiative to become true and real, right? So that we live in a country wherein all these things took place during the initial stage of the free healthcare. Corruption was unabated. We couldn't control it. And even as I'm talking to you now, I bet you this, corruption, demanding money from patients and all that in hospital is still going on, right? Pregnant women spend a lot to give tips, right? Women who give birth in hospitals spend a lot to give tips, right? We've had a lot of complaints from those people who visited the hospital and whatnot to tell us they don't even care about them if they don't give money, right? This is a systematic process. We have, now that we know that, we as journalists have to convince and put pressure to government, to the Minister of Health, government, that this is what remains to be done. We aren't going to keep on praising you, but please take care of this.
Okay, so what policy gaps do you think still exist that may continue to put, women at risk despite this improved reduction?
Women what?
To put women at risk despite these improved statistics. The gaps in policy.
Yeah, I'm just going to come into the policies that we get. Civilians are very intelligent to map out policies. I must say that. Even as civilians outside it. If you go outside the civilians that work in many institutions, they praise us, right? We're intelligent. We're morally inclined. That's okay, right? But to put policies at work means we have to constantly keep on surveillancing them, right? Keep on monitoring them. Make objections where necessary. Criticize where necessary. And make sure that you bring the perpetrators to justice. Report them to your heads so that they will take immediate action for the common good.
So, sorry. So earlier you made mention about the statistics, being reflected in rural communities.
Yeah.
So how do you think journalists are tracking maternal death in hard-to-reach areas where officials might not be able to record?
We can do that because if you look at the rate of journalism in this country, it's very poor. We have, for example, what would have happened is that look at electronic media. They would have the television would have their own team in all regional towns. Each and every newspaper would have its own correspondent in all 14 or 16 districts in this country, right? And so the radio stations would have done as well, right? But the money that is given to the fourth estate as an institution of trust, right, does not include, right, taking note of the number of deaths, taking note of the number of the births. All this has been institutionalized. There are people who should do that in communities. There are people who are supposed to do that in villages. There are people who are supposed to do that in towns as well. We only take the records from what they've given us.
Okay, so let's move over to another topic on AYB newspaper, which says Sierra Leone makes headlines in Forbes magazine. Let me just read an excerpt from the story. Sierra Leone has been featured in Forbes Africa as a rising star in West Africa's investment landscape. The recognition highlights the country's progress, policy, direction, and future. From policy reforms to private sector growth, Sierra Leone is earning a seat at the table of West Africa's investment giants. With its strategic location, abundant natural resources, and proactive economic reforms, Sierra Leone is emerging as one of the region's most promising investment destinations.
I just want to come in today. Forbes magazine is one of the most prestigious magazines in the world, right? In terms of all types of investigations, be it political, economic, or whatnot, including scientific, right? What I'm saying here is this. We in the media knew this, right? The Bureau administration is fastly moving ahead, creating new initiatives of what we were expecting, right? To create an atmosphere wherein Sierra Leone would be among the countries that suit the international standard, right? People misinterpret you, they say you are SLPP. That's not it. Forget about it, ignore it. I used to say here, while I'm here, I know my civic responsibilities, right? But I'm not an SLPP, no APC here. Here I'm representing governance, right? I'm mediator between governance and, of course, society. President Bill has indeed achieved, right? He has achieved, if only not to the praises of his critics as own, which is natural. He should be criticized. He's a human, right? There's no democratic government in the world without critics. I must say this. But I tell you, the appreciation he got beyond borders, right? If you watch at it, it's bringing in quite a lot of tokens from our saloon. Investors are coming in. No matter what the social media is saying about his governance system, no matter what people are saying that is, I mean, they are killing situation and all that about our brothers in diaspora. In the real international context, President Bill is making goals, is scoring butts, right? Not in a political context, I'm saying it, but every day, day in and night out, we getting people, we getting information that is praising the government of the Republic of Sierra Leone, irrespective of the corruption we have, but at least, let's say, for its financial disciplines.
Okay, so drawing from what you just said, can this narrative be sustained when businesses still struggles with basic infrastructure, especially with energy?
The energy problem, I've been to French countries in the world, right? They don't even have rivers, not to talk of oceans, not to talk of seas, right? But the way they plan it, I bet you there's a country like Senegal. From the capital to the last border with Mauritania, there is no village without sufficient electricity. And I'll tell you this, they have no water and all that. You see, we failed before, right? We failed before to put all this in place. We've got a diamond here. Of the 5 most precious diamonds in Africa, right? 4 of them come from Botswana and 1 from Sierra Leone. We never make use of that money to ensure that we have an everlasting or not a constant electricity problem. So I'll tell you, a lot of money has come for the money in the energy sector from the funerals and all that, but it will take us time to put everything in place. The mechanics is going on. Technically, the mechanics is going on, and we should be patient enough to make sure that we're not the reality. Afterwards, the same pre- or post-colonial machines that the British left us is still using it as Kington. Look at Black Road. All these machines needs to be changed, and it will not be a one-day process. It has to take a long-way process. What we're asking for is the money that has been sent by donors to fast track, for example, like World Bank, to capacitate the energy sector is in place, and we're watching them.
Okay, so you made mention that we are failing as a country. You know, we'll be celebrating an independence of over 60 years. What do you think are some of the reasons that we are still struggling with providing basic amenities such as electricity?
I'll tell you less. 64 years of independence means 6 decades. Go back to when you go back from the studio. We are between 4 or 5.5 decades wherein corruption was ripe in this country, right? Well, we established quite a lot of institutions, the government of the day or whatnot, that will address the problem of corruption, right? I do believe with civic education in place, right? One day, the average civilian would be able, without being told, in a conference, in a seminar, to report what he or she thought is going on that is not correct in his community. That is it. That is the essence of civic education in this country. Until we have civic education in place, when we should think of our civic responsibilities to our neighbors, to the state where we belong, and the state's responsibility to the average citizenry. We cannot be whistleblowers to the government. And democratic countries, let me tell you what is happening in developed countries you're talking about. You are a neighbor. You have a telephone. You see something unusual in the community. You call the police, right? Here, it doesn't happen. Instead, most people condone it, right? Until we, too, as citizens of this country, take part in the day-to-day hurdles of government, things will remain the same. We have to improve our mentality. We have to improve our morality. We want to say no to disinformation, no to misinformation, be on our own for patriotic and nationalistic reasons.
Okay, so let's look at policy and progress. What specific policies or reforms justify Sierra Leone's placement on Forbes' radar, and are these policies translating into real change on the ground?
No. The policy is one, the actors on the ground is another, attitude and behavior is another, right? I got about $1 billion to implement this policy, right? Everything is placed in terms of formation, but when they go out in the field, it's quite a different issue. That is what I say, dishonesty, insincerity is a virus to Sierra Leoneans. Until we avoid that, we don't expect our policies to come in place effectively as we want them, because there must be other interrupting factors that may debar them from progress.
Okay, so looking at the actuality on ground, do you think as a country we deserve this recognition?
Forbes. Let me tell you about Forbes, baby. Sorry, moderator. Forbes doesn't look who you are, where you are, your continent, your color. Now, Forbes magazine is a shareholder business that consists of millions of millionaires in terms of dollars. They don't take bribes.
Okay, so let's forget about Forbes and their criteria and what. So I'm asking you as a Sierra Leonean, do you think we deserve this recognition with the reality we have on ground?
We deserve it on the one hand because there have been other realities that they may have taken into consideration.
And why do you think we deserve this recognition?
Because day to day, day in and night out, I will believe that this is the first government that is very, very much informative of all what it's doing. Day in and night out, we saw the president, we saw the vice president, we saw the chief minister. We were seeing the ministers, of course, of the cabinet working in hard to complement President Biusadin. And it's left with us to criticize where things go wrong, because we don't expect them to go right at all times and where they go right. But I think there is improvement.
Okay. So is this recognition, would you say this recognition is a sign of actual economic transformation, or would you say is it more about perception management?
No, for this recognition that we've got, right, it will help us to get many more investors overnight. Forbes is well known. Developed political regimes know what it is. It can investigate your bank account overnight. You don't know how they get the figures, right? They're like that, right? So I think we'll be getting more than losing. This recognition brings us to a stage wherein we should be expecting more investment coming from elsewhere, not those we have now. Because the calculation those we have now, but we're expecting more to come because confidence has been created.
Okay, so this brings me to the question again on energy and infrastructure. Can a country be considered a serious investment hub where energy supply is still unreliable?
On my journalistic reviews, I always say this. We cannot talk of the present without thinking about the past. I'll say this. And we cannot talk about the future if we cannot make the present. Right? This was what I'll say. The past left with us a lot of vacuums we should accept as a nation. Irrespective of who was on the road, irrespective of who contributed to all those lapses, and now that those lapses are on the table for review, we have to take our time, we have to be patient enough to know, watch them, doing it systematically to recover.
Okay, so before we go on a break, what are the implications, of celebrating investment potential when the country has not yet solved fundamental problems like electricity, water, and road network? Sometimes
you have joy and jubilation, right? When you're a young man coming up, you have got money to marry, that doesn't mean that you're going to solve all problems in a house, right? Now, we're rejoicing because we've been recognized as a potential source of development, right? But we can't jubilate because there's a lot more to be done. This is the difference, right? Now,
what do you think needs to be done?
Just as you said, there are quite a lot of sectors which need to be filled. And until we take our time to read, to find ways and means to cater for the finance, cater for the human capital capacities and all that, I think it's not now we're going to do that, but probably we'll do that someday, whether soon or later. Depends on how fast we can do that.
Welcome back to Front Page on AYB Television on Channel 33, and you're listening to us on Radio 11.7 FM and via our mobile app. I am Edima Conte, and we'll continue to dive deeper into today's discussion. And I still have with me Mohammed Kamara in the studios. So let's go over to another discussion on the New Citizen newspaper, which says, Save Sierra-Tel and Sal Post. Presidents don't fail, systems fail. Let me just read an excerpt from the story before we start off the discussion. Two collapsing institutions, the Sierra Leone Telecommunications Company and the Sierra Leone Postal Services, both owned by the Sierra Leone government, are in dire need of help if these two companies must survive. Kama, what's your take on this?
Well, it's not an easy task to compete with the private sector. The private sector per se has a lot of millionaires who are vying for shareholding, for their shareholding rights, right? Sierra-Tel, of course, we know that they had a lot of financial problems, dishonesty, sincerity. No matter who, at the end of it, we get a lot of misappropriation of funds, right? The Sierra Leone Postal Services, we know it cannot match with the challenges of the 21st century in terms of creating facilities like internet and all that for people to go and pay and do it, right? The private is all in the hands of the private sector. And the private sector is so powerful in terms of finance that you cannot challenge it. For it to be competitive, government has to create a lot of attention on it, put in more billions or probably more millions of dollars or thousands of dollars or elsewhere for support, or rather...
So where do you think the gaps are, for governments to be able to compete with private investors?
I think the curiosity to do more is lacking. The commitment, dedication is lacking, right? The public sector doesn't look committed to competition. It depends a lot on what you're going to receive during the month. But the private sector is every second, every minute you have to see improvement because more money coming in, more facilities you get, more privileges they give you, right? But in the public sector, it's all about sitting down, washing your mobile phones and all that. You don't give a damn because you basic monthly. So the lapses that we discover in the public sector as compared to the private sector, we have to stand firm to correct them.
Okay, so how do you think we got here? Who do you think is responsible for the collapse of these two key state institutions?
The humans like we, the humans like you and me. And it's not a question of, we'll say, corruption virus, right? And most of them is a question of, say, favoritism and nepotism and the part of government authorities. Because we know in democracy it is very clear that, hey, buddy, if you eat money, you're going to pay for it. Or if you can't pay for it, we'll seize your assets, right? If you don't get assets, you go to prison. In other countries, you pay for it, we'll seize your assets, you go to prison as well, as a lesson for others not to do it. In Sierra Leone, it's not like that. And Sierra Leone, where top guys eat money and come on board, say that influential people are behind them to get their quotas and commissions to fight on behalf of them. This does not call for democracy, I don't believe. So these are some of the lapses. I got my case, I earn the money, you support me because you get a commission or because you know me, that shouldn't be happening. But here it's happening. And this hasn't been happening. I've got quite a lot of queries as Sierra-Tel, as investigative journalist. And I mean, you know that what happened, what took place decades back at Sierra Leone Postal Services about the bank, right? When they shut down the bank because they ate everything and the customers were not paid back their money. So this all created a lack of confidence in its operations. So I'll tell you this, that we have to improve our morality. We have to get committed for patriotism's sake. We have to be less political. Right? We have to be less ethnic consideration. We have to think that this is Mama Salon. There ain't going to be no other country to go and get peace of mind than here. So when they get into the job, do it perfectly well, at least for your legacy. That is it.
So drawing from what you just said about being less political and favoritism and nepotism in government, so would you say that these companies were ever run as viable businesses, or have they simply been used as a political employment hub with little focus on performance?
Thank you very much. The last one is correct. When you get all these political appointments, you fulfill the needs of your master. Right, I'll tell you this. He will tell you to give him $50 million, 50 million years or whatnot, suiting somebody in a position where he or she may not be qualified, because it's all about political influence. Until we forget about it, we shall never forge ahead.
So let's go over to, oversight and government role. What role do you think governments have played in the decline of Seratel and Salpost, or is this failure due to lack of support, poor oversight, or deliberate neglect?
It's not like lack of support. I'll tell you this. Until the influence used, right? Until the influence is drastically reduced in public institutions. Until the misappropriations of funds is clearly investigated and the culprits are brought to justice. Until those who may be found culpable of short offenses are being disciplined within the ambit of the constitutional law of this country, nothing will get on rightly. So
to look on the bright side of this, should the government continue to own and run these entities, or is it time to privatize them?
I don't want to come into this and think quite clearly we should develop country the way we have a government, we should run some private mobile company. It's not easy at all, right? It should be in the private sector. It should be privatized.
Why?
It should go, right? What we've seen at Apicel, what we've seen at Orange, what we've seen at Crisol, we don't expect it to be there. They're given a corporate social responsibility. Yeah. These mobile companies are contributing a lot to our social corporate responsibility in all forms of development, right? Our public sector can now, right? Instead, they ruin the finances. So the best is to shut it down, give it to private hands, you'll be getting your percentage as well.
So looking at innovation and what you just said about, privatizing this Salpost, for instance, in an age of mobile technology and digital communication, is there even a future for institutions like Salpost?
No, yeah. Salpost has the best machine in terms of mobile mobility. They have the best machines. In terms of mobility, they have the best machines, right? But they lack the competition because they're not living on their own.
So why do you think Seratel has failed to compete in the telecom space?
Because of private human factors that contributed to collapse that institution, such as bribery, influence and all that, and inaccountability to the process.
So why is it that private institutions thrive in our country and we can't say same for government institutions?
Because they're
government-owned businesses.
Because they're meant for profit. And if you cannot make it up, there you go. So you should be competitive in everything you do.
Okay, so looking at impact and public trust, yeah. So what does this collapse of this institution says about government's ability to manage public enterprises?
Public mistrust is one, right? Government inability to manage these enterprises comes up to the civil state lottery, which is now we have the elephant, whatnot there. Government, just like Seratel, cannot manage most of this money, whatnot institutions, right? It has to be privatized, or it has to go to private hands, either in shares and whatnot, right? But there have been quite a lot of other institutions which are equally the same, like Seratel, like Australian Postal Services, because of mismanagement, and it's nice time and a competitive 21st century for them to hand over to the private sector as well, to create more employment, right? Create more device employment, right? Decentralize the institutions, right? And even contribute towards the corporate social responsibility.
Okay. Do you think trust can be regained?
For me personally, I don't trust them because of history. I don't trust them because
Why?
of history.
What are some of the reasons for that?
Because I'm a Slovenian, I would like to see profit, I like to see benefit, I like to see the lives of my people improve much more better. I would like to see the socio-economic sustainability of the average Slovenian is not suffering, but living comfortably. So when this institution one takes all the money, it doesn't go well with me.
Okay, so what do you think should be done in all of this?
Penalization, sometimes, without favors.
Okay, so let's move over to another discussion on the Open Space newspaper, which says, as NACIT plans official opening, Sewa ground market set to benefit 6,000 traders. What's your take on this?
I just want to say this back. The foreign city invested about £22,000 sterling or whatnot, euros, if I could remember best. Money has already been misappropriated at several grounds, during the former government's contractors, We saw zinc being built, then it was condemned. Then NASIT came in, right? This is not first. Samagra is not the first time for NASIT to invest. Look at the hotels and quite a lot of other places. This is what we expect government institutions to do. If Sierra Leone had been much more rewarding, this is what it should have done. But I'll tell you this, no matter the minimal corruption that may be taking place at NASIT, NASIT is a beacon of hope. So, had it not been NASIT, it's clear. Now let me make this very clear when people have been misinterpreting the whole show. You cannot expect the people of Abacha to leave Abacha because government has a direct responsibility to ensure that the citizens of this country are first of all provided with such amenities to do their business. So government and city council was all time wrong to tell them to get out in the street when there were no provisions for them to go. It is now its beginning. And this is the fundamental human rights that we should be given to citizens of the country. It is now that we begin to tell the real story, the true story, that these people had an objective. Find us a place to go, we can go there. And in fact, the increase in population means several grounds may not be sufficient. We need more and more in the city.
So generally, what's your view of this project? Do you think it's a good project for market women?
It's a good project to enhance development. It's a good project to enhance socio-economic sustainability for the private citizen. It's a good project to fight against poverty. It's a good project to create other developments because we are on it and we're going to see quite a lot of progress to the average citizen. And now, traffic will become congested if you can take into consideration that as well. The traffic at Abacha and all that, right? But that should not be limited only to several grounds. I think a few people will be living at Abacha who just equally have the freedom because now that there is something that separates the trader from the main streets, and that's good.
So would you say this project is genuinely about empowering local traders or more about sticking off a public investment box for NASIT's portfolio?
It's all about investment. NASIT has to get its scaled gains and the public will enjoy it. But that's what it means in democracy. Like, NASIT is purely Sierra Leonean, right? Right? It's not American, right? What it does is to benefit the average Sierra Leonean, right? And this is what it is doing. And this is what it has done. Right? It's something to get out about, but we have to know that NASIT itself is committed to national development one way or the other, and these are just indications.
So you're talking about removing, Abacha women from the streets. So how will this market reduce the pressure of street trading in Central Freetown? You
cannot remove all of them. No, it's impossible. And you cannot get all of them there. The congestion will take place, right? You cannot. What I'm saying is this. We have to keep on searching for another spacious place to build another several ground, sort of, where most of the people will go if we want to clear the street. But I'll tell you this, we have to respect for those of us, for those who will be living there, because it's their own fundamental right. Until we ensure that we provide them a place, you cannot just say, we've opened a 6,000 place at several ground, all of you will go like as if they are not humans. No, that may contradict the fundamental human rights of people as well.